At the class reunion, Ethan went wild. When a photo of him kissing his first love, Sophie, in front of everyone landed on my phone, I was in the middle of locking down a deal worth tens of millions. He came home carrying a cloud of perfume and said it was just for fun, just a game, nothing to take seriously. I smiled and nodded, then turned around and made sure Sophie's name was ruined and that she ended up tens of millions in debt. Ethan knelt in the private room, crying and begging me to let her go. I agreed to everything. I lifted the pen between my fingers and signed my name cleanly on the final contract. The nib skimmed the paper with a soft rasp, as if the dust were finally settling. "Pleasure working with you, Mr. Warren." He raised his head, a flawless professional smile on his face, and pushed the contract across the wide mahogany desk. Outside, the city lights were coming on. Neon flowed in and laid a cool sheen across the sharp line of his profile. "Miss Lynn, your reputation for being decisive is well-deserved," the slightly heavy-set Mr. Warren said with a booming laugh, reaching out to give my hand a firm shake. "Let's celebrate tonight. You pick the place." My smile didn't change. My tone was gentle yet carried a cool distance that couldn't be challenged. "I've got something at home. Next time I'll host and make sure to share a proper drink with you." I swept the papers into order with brisk, fluid movements. My phone lit up silently, a new message slid into the edge of my vision. I didn't look right away. After I saw a satisfied Mr. Warren out, the huge office fell instantly quiet, leaving only the low breath of the central air. I walked back to the wall of floor-to-ceiling glass. Below me, the river of cars merged into a sea of moving lights. Somewhere deep in that sea, in a quiet corner, was the home Ethan and I shared. We'd been married 5 years, not 7. But it was still long enough for a lot of things to quietly fade and wear down in the sameness of day after day. He had a college classmates gathering tonight. Before heading out, he'd taken extra care shaving and changed into the new shirt I'd bought him. That deliberately polished reflection in the mirror, the kind he tried to downplay, pricked at my heart like a small thorn. At last, my fingertips slid the phone open. It wasn't Ethan checking in or asking if I was coming home. The sender was a number I didn't recognize, and the content was only a single photo. In the dim, suggestive light of a large KTV private room, a spinning disco ball tossed multicolored spots across everyone's faces. Even through the screen, the air seemed thick with alcohol and indulgence. The focus of the shot was the two people in the middle. Ethan, my husband, sitting on a wide couch, the top 2 buttons of his shirt undone, a small triangle of skin showing. A woman sat on his lap, Sophie. Even through a screen, even after 5 years without seeing her, I recognized the face that had once turned Ethan's head completely. Sophie wore a glittering spaghetti-strap mini dress, her body almost entirely sunk into Ethan's arms. One of her arms was wrapped intimately around his neck, while Ethan's hand rested openly, tightly, on her bare waist. Their faces were so close their noses almost touched, sharing the same microphone, their expressions equally absorbed with a hint of intoxicated smiles. In the background, several blurred faces looked on with excited spectator expressions. Beneath the photo was a single short line, sharp as a poisoned icicle. "Ms. Lynn, look how much fun your Mr. Carter is having." Truth or dare, the kiss was deep. No signature, none needed. The intent was obvious. Time seemed to freeze. The brilliance outside my window lost all color and sound in an instant, turning into a dead, black-and-white film. My knuckles went pale around the phone from how hard I was gripping it. My nails bit into the soft flesh of my palm, a sharp pain that barely pulled me back to myself. I stared at Ethan's hand on Sophie's waist, the same hand that, just this morning before he left, had gently brushed the stray hair back from my ear, now planted on another woman's smooth skin in a posture of absolute possession. And the way he looked at Sophie, focused, with a long missing light in his eyes, was something I'd found harder and harder to catch in his gaze over the past 5 years. A cold, metallic-tasting surge rose in my throat. I shut my eyes and forced it down. The phone buzzed again, same number. This time it was a video, only a little over 10 seconds long. The moment I tapped it open, a blast of noisy music and voices rushed out. The image shook slightly, but the main figures were still Ethan and Sophie. Someone in the background shouted, "Kiss her. You've got to kiss her." Ethan, the regret you never made up for back then, make up for it tonight. Sophie, don't chicken out. Ethan's face was flushed from the alcohol, his gaze a little unfocused, but his smile was wide. The hand he had on Sophie's waist didn't loosen. If anything, it tightened. He lowered his head to look at the woman in his arms with an almost teasing challenge. Sophie, dare you? Her cheeks were pink, eyes glossy. She gave his chest a small, playful push, that coy mix of protest and invitation. Stop, so many people are watching. What's there to be afraid of? Ethan laughed, the kind of reckless laughter that comes after too many drinks. Amid the crowd's shouts and whistles, he suddenly dropped his head and caught her lips with precision. Not a fleeting brush, but a solid, deep kiss full of blatant possession. Sophie made a token struggle, then wrapped her arms even tighter around his neck, answering him with heat. The video cut off abruptly, the final frame frozen on the side view of their lips and tongues entwined, the lights casting dizzy shadows across their faces. The air in my office felt as if it had been sucked out, heavy enough to suffocate. The cold glass of the floor-to-ceiling windows reflected my own figure, tailored business suit, hair pulled back in a perfect twist, face utterly expressionless, like a lifeless jade carving. Only I knew something inside my chest had shattered completely. The crash deafening, the shards driving into flesh until the pain left my entire body cold. I drew in a breath, slowly, painfully slowly. The icy air stabbed my lungs. Then I raised my hand and calmly dragged that unfamiliar number, along with the 2 glaring photos and the video, into my blocked list. My movements were steady, without the slightest tremor. When it was done, I picked up the desk phone and dialed my assistant, Emily. My voice was even, giving nothing away. Emily, I need you to look into someone. Sophie, I want to know where she's working now, her exact position, what projects she's responsible for, and a list of all recent developments at her company, including their core clients. Make it fast. There was a brief pause on the other end, then Emily responded quickly. Understood, Miss Lynn. I'll get right on it. I hung up and sank back into the leather chair. The huge desk was smooth as a mirror, reflecting the cold white light above and my bloodless face. My gaze fell to the freshly signed copy of the multi-million-dollar contract on the desk. The gold-stamped letters on the cover gleamed under the light with a hard, icy edge. The meaning of betrayal coiled around me like a venomous snake. But soon something else, colder and stronger, broke through from deep inside, a force determined to destroy everything in its path, freezing over whatever pain remained. My lips curved faintly, but the smile held no warmth, only the depthless cold of ice on the verge of shattering. Game, I breathed into the empty room, the words so soft it was almost inaudible. All right, let's see who can really play. The clock's hand swept past midnight. At last, the faint click of a key turning in the front door lock reached my ears. I hadn't turned on the living room light, only left the floor lamp beside the sofa glowing in a small pool of warm yellow. I sat curled in the sofa, a thick industry analysis report spread across my lap, pen in hand, as if I were fully absorbed in it. The light cast a small shadow under my lowered lashes, hiding every trace of emotion. When the door opened, a wave of mixed scents flooded in, sharp alcohol, the heavy haze of tobacco, and the cloying sweetness of an overripe woman's perfume. The kind with a blatant, teasing blend of flowers and fruit that overpowered everything else. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his steps a little unsteady. Ethan tugged at the tie that felt a little too tight, his face still carrying the flushed excitement of the night, his eyes slightly unfocused. When he saw me waiting in the living room, he froze for a brief moment, then pulled out a tipsy smile. Haven't gone to bed yet, Lana? Were you waiting for me? He kicked off his shoes as he came inside, bringing with him that cloying perfume, thick and sweet, spreading into the air until it seemed to form an invisible aura around him. I lifted my head, my gaze resting calmly on his face before drifting over the wrinkled collar of his shirt. There, barely visible, was a faint pearly pink smudge. My eyes lingered 1 second longer on his lips, still faintly glossy, before I looked away. Just reading some reports. My voice was even, without any hint of mood. I closed the thick industry analysis on my lap and asked, "Did you have fun at the party?" It was all right, Ethan said, shrugging off his coat as he strode toward the sofa, bringing with him a mix of alcohol, smoke, and that perfume. He dropped heavily into the single armchair beside me, sinking into the cushions with a long exhale. It was just old classmates. We haven't seen each other in years, so things got a little rowdy. He rubbed his temples, as if to chase away the lingering haze of drink. The perfume, Sophie's perfume, grew stronger with his nearness, filling my nose with a sweetness so heavy it was almost nauseating. "What did you all do to stay out so late?" I asked, my tone still light, as though I were asking about the weather. I even turned slightly to pour him a glass of warm water from the pot on the coffee table and passed it to him. "Thanks, babe." He took the glass and gulped down a large mouthful, a thin trail of water slipping from the corner of his lips. He wiped it away with his sleeve without a thought. "What else would we do? Just drinking, singing, talking nonsense. Oh, right." His tone shifted, becoming almost deliberately casual, with a hint of hurried explanation. "We played Truth or Dare. Old, stupid game. Those guys wouldn't stop chanting for me to do something with Sophie." He mumbled the last part, his eyes flicking toward me to read my expression. Seeing none, he went on quickly. "But it was just messing around. I hugged her, kissed her cheek, just to keep the mood going. It didn't mean anything. Lena, you know you're the only one in my heart." As he spoke, he leaned forward, reaching for my hand resting on my knee, as if to convey sincerity. Before he could touch me, I quietly drew my hand back, picked up the report beside me, and let my fingers skim across the glossy cover. "Sophie," I repeated softly, lifting my eyes to meet his. My gaze was clear and calm, like a surface of water that reflected nothing back. "She was there too. You two seem pretty familiar." My voice carried just the right trace of a wife's gentle curiosity. Ethan's composure faltered. The confrontation, tears, or anger he might have expected didn't come. He licked his dry lips, avoiding my eyes, and his tone quickened in defense. "Familiar? No, come on. It's been years since we last talked. We just happened to run into each other tonight." "Really, Lana, don't overthink it. It was just a game. Everyone was drunk and goading us. It didn't mean anything, I swear." He even raised 3 fingers in mock oath, his flushed, anxious face made faintly comical by the alcohol. "Didn't mean anything?" I echoed lightly, the corner of my mouth twitching upward by the slightest fraction, but the curve vanished so quickly it could have been imagined. I didn't look at him again, my eyes dropping back to the report in my hands as though it were the only thing that mattered. "Got it," I said softly, my voice light as a feather falling. "Get some rest if you're tired. The bathwater's ready for you." I spoke without looking up, my eyes still on the report. Pages rustled faintly as I turned them, the sound light but deliberate. The warm yellow lamp lit only one side of my face. The other half was hidden in shadow, unreadable. Ethan's hand, the one he'd raised in mock oath, froze awkwardly in midair. The explanations he'd rehearsed on the way home, the soothing words, even the readiness to drop to his knees and beg, everything was swallowed by my light, almost offhand. "Got it." The words lodged in his throat like a waterlogged wad of cotton, impossible to swallow or spit out, suffocating in their weight. He stared at my calm, almost indifferent profile in the lamplight, the heavy perfume still clinging faintly at the edge of his senses. An unfamiliar panic gripped him out of nowhere. Did I know? Or did I simply not care anymore? The thought slithered in like a venomous snake, making a sudden cold sweat break out along his back. The alcohol in his blood seemed to drain away. "Lana," he opened his mouth again, wanting to say more. "Go," I said, still not raising my head, my tone as even as before. "It's late." My voice was gentle, yet held the kind of quiet authority that left no room for argument. Ethan's Adam's apple bobbed, but every word he might have said stuck fast in his throat. He looked at me, silent for a moment longer, and for the first time the familiar living room, the warm pool of light from the floor lamp, seemed to carry a coldness that pressed the air out of his lungs. In the end, he said nothing. Standing a little awkwardly, he walked toward the bathroom, his steps almost yielding in defeat. The sound of running water soon filled the air, masking the dead silence in the living room. I kept the same posture, the report open in my hands. The water ran for a long time. Not a single word on the page had registered in my mind. Instead, my nails traced unconsciously over the glossy surface, making a faint grating sound that set teeth on edge. Didn't mean anything. I turned my head slightly, my eyes falling on Ethan's coat, tossed carelessly over the arm of the sofa. That sickly sweet perfume clung stubbornly to the fabric like a cruel brand. Good. The cold depths in my eyes rippled, a black whirlpool churning silently beneath the surface. The game had begun, and the rules would be mine. 3 days later, at 10 a.m., the conference room of Horizon Ventures was filled to capacity around a massive circular table. The atmosphere was heavy, the beam from the projector illuminating a detailed market analysis and an upcoming Series A financing proposal. Standing in front of the screen was Sophie, the project manager, dressed in a sharp white suit with flawless makeup, exuding confidence as she outlined the project's core competitive advantages and profit model. In summary, the Enjoy Life platform, backed by precise user profiling and an innovative community group buying model, has tremendous potential for explosive growth and sustainable expansion in the local lifestyle service sector. The $50 million from this round of financing will be primarily used to. The door to the conference room opened quietly. A young woman in a black suit peeked her head in, her expression holding a trace of nervousness. Her gaze swept the room quickly before settling on the frowning company president, Richard Lee. "Mr. Lee, sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice soft but clear enough for everyone to hear. "Reception just received an urgent document addressed to you and manager Sophie. It's about an audit anomaly in the core data of the Enjoy Life project." In her hands was a thin manila envelope. Audit anomaly. Richard Lee's brow furrowed sharply. Every eye in the room turned toward the ordinary-looking envelope, the air shifting into something taut and uneasy. The confident smile on Sophie's face froze, her fingers tightening around the laser pointer. Richard Lee's expression hardened as he motioned for his assistant to bring the file over. He opened it himself, pulled out the only 2 sheets inside, and scanned them quickly. His already serious face darkened to iron in an instant. His head snapped up, his sharp gaze cutting toward Sophie like a blade. The look made her chest tighten, but she forced herself to stand tall. "Mr. Lee, what's going on? This has to be a malicious attack on our data." "Malicious attack?" Richard Lee let out a cold laugh, his voice not loud, yet carrying the oppressive weight of thunder. Richard Lee slammed the 2 sheets of paper down on the polished conference table, the sharp crack echoing through the room. The pages slid to a stop in front of Sophie. "Manager Sophie, explain this to me. The daily active user numbers for last month's platform traffic are inflated by 30%. Merchant transaction data has been padded by nearly 10 million. And these," he tapped the paper hard, "these fabricated screenshots of 5-star user reviews. You tell me what's going on here." The 2 thin A4 sheets laid out in stark clarity the real back-end screenshots of several key operating metrics for the Enjoy Life platform, alongside the falsified figures Sophie's team had submitted in the financing report. Bright red arrows marked the discrepancies, each one like a fresh, bleeding wound. Beside every comparison was a short but deadly note, even pinpointing the exact time of the data tampering and the operation IDs involved. The evidence was conclusive, undeniable. The conference room went silent, so still you could hear a pin drop. Only minutes ago, the investor representatives had been engaged and interested. Now, their faces darkened, glances exchanged across the table. One even shut the folder in front of him without a word. The color drained from Sophie's face. She snatched up the papers, her fingers trembling uncontrollably. Every word, every number felt like a branding iron, searing her eyes. Impossible. These core metrics were accessible only to her and a handful of trusted staff, who had stabbed her in the back. "Mr. Lee, this is slander," she said sharply, her voice cracking with panic and fury. "Someone's trying to frame me. I demand a full investigation into the source of these so-called findings." "Source unknown?" Richard Lee shot to his feet, jabbing a finger at the system log screenshots and operation IDs printed in black and white. "It clearly shows your assistant, Mark Wong's, access credentials and operation records. What more do you need to investigate?" His voice dropped, cold with contempt. "The company trusted you. We put this critical project in your hands. And this is how you repay us? Inflating data to secure financing, lying to investors, you're pushing Horizon straight into the fire pit." His chest heaved with rage, the veins at his temple standing out. "Mark? No, impossible. Sophie's head whipped toward the corner where her assistant sat, head bowed. Mark's shoulders shook, his head ducking lower still, not daring to speak. But his silence was as damning as any confession. Manager Sophie, one senior investor representative, finally spoke, adjusting his glasses, his tone icy as he cut through the suffocating quiet. Given the severity of the data falsification we've just seen, our firm must seriously question both the authenticity of the Enjoy Life project and the integrity of its team. I'm sorry, but we've decided to withdraw from consideration for this funding round. Another voice followed almost immediately. We'll need to reassess the risks before we can revisit any discussions. Mr. Lee, a third added flatly, it seems we have much to talk about regarding next steps. Each statement landed like a hammer blow on Sophie's chest. The project she'd prepared for months, the biggest card she had to play since returning to the workforce, the stepping stone she dreamed would launch her career, was smashed to pieces in minutes, right in front of every key decision-maker. Her carefully cultivated professional image was trampled into the mud. Panic rose like a tide, blackening her vision. She opened her mouth, but no words came, only the sight of Richard Lay's furious, distorted face, the investor's cold, detached eyes, and her colleagues' expressions of shock or disdain. It was over. Completely over. She didn't even know which direction the knife had come from. At that same moment, my assistant Emily set a freshly brewed cup of black coffee on my desk, unable to hide the mix of excitement and awe in her eyes. Miss Lin, word just came from Horizon. The meeting was cut short. Richard Lee lost his temper on the spot. Sophie nearly fainted, they say. Several major investors have already announced they're pulling out. I sat straight in my wide leather chair, eyes fixed on the shifting K-line chart on my monitor. The alternating red and green bars flickered, their light reflecting in my calm, still gaze. Hearing Emily's report, I didn't so much as glance away from the screen. I gave the smallest nod, as if she'd just told me the weather. I lifted the cup, taking a slow sip. The bitter, rich liquid slid down my throat. Got it. My fingers glided lightly over the smooth trackpad, and the lines on the screen shifted seamlessly. Sunlight streamed through the narrow slats of the blinds, casting alternating stripes of light and shadow across the pale skin on the back of my hand. Emily glanced at my calm, unreadable profile, the mixture of respect and awe in her eyes growing even deeper. She hesitated, then finally asked in a low voice, "Miss Lin, did the surgery money for Mark's brother go through yet?" My gaze stayed fixed on the computer screen as I answered evenly, "It was taken care of yesterday. Anonymous donation." "That's good," Emily replied quickly. I set down my coffee cup with a soft, crisp sound. "Tell him he can't stay at Horizon anymore. Monday morning, report to Chiming Technologies. Position and salary are the same as we discussed before." "Yes, Miss Lin." The office returned to quiet, the only sounds the faint sigh of the air conditioning and the low hum of the computer tower. My eyes finally moved away from the K-line chart, drifting toward the clear, high expanse of sky outside the window. My fingertips tapped lightly against the cold porcelain wall of the coffee cup, producing a steady, rhythmic sound. This was just the appetizer. Sophie's betrayal would be repaid in full, piece by piece, until she had nothing left. Sophie's world had completely collapsed. The Enjoy Life project was abruptly shut down by Horizon, and an internal investigation team, like sharks scenting blood, moved in. Data falsification, chaotic management, severe financial loopholes, one by one, each issue was dragged into the light without mercy. Any single one was enough to destroy her reputation in the industry. Horizon didn't spare her the slightest courtesy. A curt, sharply worded dismissal notice swept her out the door, taking with it all the professional relationships and credibility she had built over the years. And this was only the beginning. Word spread fast in the industry. The big companies that had once extended offers now either refused to take her calls or had HR politely and distantly tell her the position had been filled. Even the headhunters went silent. Overnight, Sophie's name became an unspoken taboo in the circle, a living label for data fraud and compromised ethics. The worst was the financial pressure. To keep up appearances, to shine at the class reunion, she had maxed out her credit cards and taken on multiple consumer loans. Now, with no income, the debt collector's calls came day and night, relentless as a curse. Cold, automated voices alternated with aggressive agents threatening to expose her contact list, to sue her, to ruin her credit. The interest piled up like a snowball, growing heavier until she could barely breathe. In just a few weeks, it was as if all the vitality had been drained from her. Even expensive makeup couldn't hide the dark hollows under her eyes, and no costly perfume could mask the thick scent of anxiety and despair clinging to her. She shut herself inside her rented luxury apartment, curtains drawn, phone on silent, yet she could still feel the invisible mountain of debt pressing down, crushing her spine inch by inch. Now she was truly cornered, completely out of options. On a night when rain poured in sheets, the sound of raindrops hammered against the glass in a frenzied rhythm, like countless cold hands pounding at the window, Sophie curled up on the cold floor of the living room, her hair disheveled, her expensive silk nightgown wrinkled beyond recognition. After hanging up yet another debt collection call, the text alert of her bank account balance flashed across the screen and shattered the last thread of her reason. Her hands shook as she dialed, almost by instinct, the number she knew by heart. The line rang for a long time before it was answered. The background was noisy. "Hello?" Ethan's voice carried a trace of fatigue and the irritation of being disturbed. "Ethan? Ethan." Sophie's voice was hoarse and broken, thick with sobs she couldn't control, clinging to the last straw she could grasp. "Help me, please. I'm begging you, help me. I'm finished, I'm really finished. Horizon fired me, no one will take me. They're all after me, those debts, I can't pay them back. I'll die. Ethan, for old time's sake, please. Lend me some money, just enough so I can catch my breath. Please, please." Her words tumbled out, gasping and incoherent, the weight of her fear stripping away her ability to think. On the other end of the line, Ethan was silent for a few seconds. Sophie's desperate cries mingled with the roar of the storm outside, pounding in his ears. And he remembered the dizzy heat of that night at the class reunion. He remembered the soft warmth of Sophie's body in his arms that night, and the way she had kissed him back with such heat. He remembered that tiny, secret flicker of vanity and excitement, magnified by alcohol, that had pulsed through him in the moment. A ripple of guilt and something far more complicated welled up. "Where are you now?" he asked in a low voice. "At home," Sophie said between sobs, as though she had just caught sight of salvation. Her crying only grew more frantic. The moment Ethan hung up, he grabbed his car keys and bolted for the door, without so much as a word to me. Sitting in the study reviewing documents after just returning from a business trip, he plunged straight into the rain outside. The downpour drenched him in seconds, the cold seeping through his skin and jolting him to his senses. The last traces of alcohol vanished, but Sophie's desperate cries still echoed in his ears. The car tore through the storm, windshield wipers thrashing wildly, blurring what little visibility he had. His mind was a mess. He knew I had been different lately, calm to the point of being frightening and distant from him in a way that made him feel like a stranger. Could what happened to Sophie? A terrible thought started to form, but he shoved it down hard. No, I wasn't that kind of person. This had to be a coincidence. Sophie must have brought this on herself. The car screeched to a stop in front of her apartment building. He dashed inside, pounding on her door. It flew open almost instantly. Sophie stood there like a startled rabbit, her face white as paper, eyes swollen and red like walnuts. She lunged at him, clutching his arm so tightly her nails nearly pierced his skin. "You came, Ethan. You finally came. The money, did you bring it? Lend me 500,000. Just 500 will do. I'm going crazy." Her gaze was unfocused, her tone wild, almost hysterical. Her grip hurt, and as he looked at her now, disheveled, desperate, she was a far cry from the radiant woman at the reunion. The small trace of pity and nostalgia inside him vanished, replaced by a surge of irritation and a faint, creeping disgust. 500? "I don't have that kind of cash," he said sharply, trying to pry her fingers loose. "Calm down and tell me exactly what happened." "Horizon? It's Lana. It has to be Lana." Sophie flinched at the name as though it had burned her, then suddenly screamed, her voice shrill and ragged. "She's the one who ruined me. Who else could it be? She knows. She knows about that night at the reunion. She's taking revenge on me. Ethan, she's a devil. She's after you. She's punishing us both." Tears and snot ran down her face as she spiraled further into hysteria. Stop talking nonsense. Ethan's heart gave a violent thud, as if struck with a hammer. A wave of cold shot up from the soles of his feet. Lana, the calm, terrifyingly composed Lana. She's not like that, he barked. You messed up at work. Don't you dare drag her into this. But even as he denied it, Sophie's words planted something poisonous in him, taking root instantly and sending tendrils of fear through his chest. He thought of the expression I'd worn that night, the cool glint in my eyes when I'd asked about Sophie. Could it really be? Yes, it's her. Sophie wasn't listening, only clutching him harder, her nails breaking skin and leaving red trails on his arm. Ethan, you have to save me. You have to. I'm in this mess because of you. You can't just leave me like this. Go to her, beg her, tell her to let me go. Please. I'll get on my knees if I have to. And with that, her legs gave way beneath her. With a heavy thud, Sophie dropped to her knees on the cold tile, clutching Ethan's legs in a death grip as she sobbed and wailed. The suddenness of it startled him into stillness, looking down at the woman at his feet, crying without an ounce of dignity, reduced to a desperate wreck. A wave of absurdity and icy dread washed over him, drowning out everything else. Outside, the rain poured in torrents, thunder rolling overhead. He yanked her hands off him, as though shaking away something filthy, staggering back a step. His face pale. You're insane. He couldn't bear to look at her again, an overpowering urge to escape clenched around his chest. He turned and all but fled, slamming the apartment door hard behind him. Sophie's desperate sobs and pounding on the door were cut off, swallowed whole by the roar of the storm. Ethan stumbled into the elevator, leaning back against the cold metal wall, gulping air. His clothes were soaked through, his body shaking with cold. She's after you. She's punishing us. Sophie's words whirled through his head like a curse he couldn't shake. He burst out of the building, the icy rain pelting down on him, plastering his hair to his head. He yanked the car door open but didn't get in right away. A fear unlike anything he'd felt before clamped around his ribs, sharper than the rain's bite. No, he had to see Lana. He had to ask her. He had to beg her. The car tore through the downpour, the wipers working furiously, but the road ahead was still a blur of water and shadow. Sophie's cries and Lana's calm, unreadable face flickered in his mind, one after the other. He pressed the gas pedal to the floor. When the car shot into the driveway of what he thought of as home, the headlights cut through the rain, and he immediately saw that the master bedroom window was still lit. Lana was awake. He shoved the door open without even turning off the engine, half running, half stumbling through the sheets of rain until he reached the front steps. The water soaked him to the bone in seconds, but his eyes were fixed upward on that second-floor window glowing with warm light. The panic and cornered desperation hit all at once, buckling his knees. He crashed down onto the rain-slick stone steps, the pain shooting up from his kneecaps, nothing compared to the crushing ache in his chest. Lana, he bellowed with everything he had, his voice ragged, splintering in the storm. Lana, come out. Please listen to me. Lana, I know I was wrong. I swear I know. I shouldn't have gotten involved with Sophie. I shouldn't have lost my head. It's all my fault. Just let her go. I'm begging you, let Sophie go. She's going to be destroyed. If you let her go, I'll do anything you want. Anything. Whatever you ask, I'll do it. Please, Lana, I'm begging you. Think of all our years together. Please. He knelt there in the cold, pounding rain like an abandoned dog, repeating his pleas over and over. Tears and snot ran freely, mixing with the rain on his face. The villa was silent. Only the drumming of the storm and his hoarse cries echoed across the empty garden. The lit window above was like a cold, unblinking eye, gazing down at him crumpled in the rain, without a flicker of response. Water streamed down his hair and face, seeping under his collar, chilling him to the marrow. His teeth chattered uncontrollably, his knees numb from kneeling on the rough, wet stone, the cold sinking into his bones. He kept his eyes fixed on that second-floor window, light still burning inside, yet closed tight like the gates of a fortress. His shouts grew hoarse, thinning into weak, hopeless sobs. Lana, please, open the door, let me explain. The only answer was the storm, its fury drowning him completely. I don't know how long I stood there, maybe only a few minutes, maybe as long as a century, before the villa's heavy, carved wooden door finally opened from the inside. Warm, golden light spilled out from the entryway, casting a bright pool across the wet stone and forming a sharp, almost painful contrast with the cold darkness outside. I stood right at the line between light and shadow, dressed in a soft, deep gray cashmere loungewear set. My hair was loosely gathered at the back of my head, bearing my smooth forehead and the curve of my neck. In my hand was a delicate porcelain teacup, steam curling upward into the frigid night air. My face was void of expression, neither anger nor pity, still as an unfeeling statue. My gaze drifted down the steps, past the rain to Ethan, drenched from head to toe, kneeling in the muddy water like a half-drowned dog. There was not the slightest ripple in my eyes. That look, colder and sharper than the storm itself, made him flinch, his heart lurching violently in his chest. Terror seized him, but it was as if he'd just glimpsed his only hope. He crawled forward a step, hands and knees scraping the wet stone, reaching desperately for the edge of the light. "Lana, you came out. You're willing to see me," he rasped, his voice torn and ragged. "Listen to me, I'm a bastard. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gone to the reunion. I shouldn't have touched Sophie. I was drunk, it was all the alcohol's fault. I swear, you're the only one in my heart. Lana, forgive me this once, I promise I'll never see her again. Just let her go, please. She's on the brink, she's going to be destroyed. For the sake of our 5 years together, spare her this time. I'm begging you. I'll do anything you want." His words tumbled out, incoherent, his face streaked with tears and rain, utterly stripped of dignity. I listened in silence, my lashes not even trembling. I turned my head slightly and blew gently over the rim of my teacup, the rising steam momentarily softening my features. Only when his pleas began to fade, replaced by heavy breaths and muffled sobs, did I lift my eyes again, my calm gaze settling on his face, distorted, ravaged by the mingled wash of rain and tears. "Anything?" I said at last. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried clearly through the pounding rain, slicing into the suffocating quiet like a thin blade of shattered ice. Ethan latched onto the words like a drowning man grasping a lifeline. He nodded frantically, a wild gleam of relief lighting his eyes. "Yes, anything. As long as you let Sophie go, give her a way to live, I'll do whatever you want. I'll take time off tomorrow, we can go travel, clear our heads. We could finally go to Iceland like you've always wanted. Or I can sign the car over to you." "Lana, just say the word." I looked at him, looked at the way he groveled, wagging his tail for another woman's sake, debasing himself in front of me without shame. The last faint, barely there ember of a wife's sentiment I might have had for him died in that instant. The corner of my lips lifted slightly, an icy mocking curve gone in a heartbeat. "All right," I said softly. The joy on his face froze, then burst into an even greater wave of disbelief and relief. His voice shook with elation. "Lana, you mean it? You forgive me? I knew you." He stopped when I moved. I didn't look at him. Instead, I turned slightly toward the doorway and spoke. "Emily, give it to me." From the shadows of the entryway, my assistant, Emily, stepped forward, her face expressionless as she handed me a thin manila envelope stamped with the letterhead of a law firm. I took it without so much as glancing at it, tilted my wrist, and sent it arcing through the rain. It landed with a sharp slap on the wet stone right in front of Ethan's knees. The paper darkened instantly where the rain soaked in, spreading a deep stain across the surface. The joy on Ethan's face cracked like a cheap mask. He stared down at the damp envelope, then jerked his head upward to look at me. His eyes were full of suspicion, that unease in them growing darker with every second. I looked down at him from the doorway, my gaze calm and unruffled as if I were looking at a stranger. "Sign it." My voice was even, without the slightest tremor, but the words landed in Ethan's ears like a hammer blow. "Sign the divorce agreement. Once you've signed, I'll let your Sophie go." It was as if a thunderclap exploded inside his skull. Every drop of blood in his body seemed to freeze, then surge backward in a rush so violent it made his vision swim. Divorce. I wanted a divorce, over Sophie, over one drunken, foolish night. The shock and sheer absurdity of it robbed him of any ability to react. He just knelt there stiffly, staring at the sodden envelope on the ground as if it were a coiled viper poised to strike. "No. Impossible," he muttered, his voice trembling uncontrollably. He jerked his head up, eyes filled with hurt and a wounded disbelief. Lana, you can't do this. Over something so small? Over someone as insignificant as Sophie? You'd divorce me? We've been together 5 years. 5 years, and you'd be this heartless? His voice suddenly rose to a desperate roar. I don't agree. I'll never agree, not even if I die. Insignificant? I repeated softly, as if I'd just heard the most ridiculous joke. I stepped forward into the warm pool of light spilling from the entryway, lowering my gaze to look at the man kneeling in the muddy water. For the first time, my clear eyes reflected the full view of Ethan's twisted, rain-soaked face, along with a cold, cutting mockery that went straight to the bone. Ethan, I said, my voice quiet but carrying the weight to sever everything between us, the game is over. I didn't look at him again, as though even another glance would be an insult to myself. Turning with my teacup in hand, I walked back into the house. The soft cashmere of my dark gray loungewear caught the warm light, my frame straight and unwavering. Emily, close the door. Yes, Miss Lynn. Emily stepped forward at once. No, Lana, you can't. Listen to me, I can explain. Ethan's voice cracked into a terrified scream. He struggled to get up, trying to lunge toward me, but the heavy, carved door swung shut with a deep, final thud before his mud-smeared hand could touch the frame. The sound sealed off the storm outside from the warm, bright, peaceful air inside. It also sealed Ethan off from the last scrap of my world he'd been clinging to. Beyond the door was nothing but darkness, the icy rain, and a man kneeling in the mud, abandoned. Beside him lay the divorce papers, soaking quietly in the puddles, a silent emblem of the end. He stared blankly at the closed door, then looked down at the envelope, now fully wet and limp. The sound of the door closing had shattered every last ounce of his hope and delusion. A raw animal howl tore out of him as he curled into himself in the cold rain, his whole body shaking violently. Tears and rain blurred his vision. It's over. All of it's over. The rain beat down without mercy, washing over him until he didn't know how long he'd been kneeling there in the suffocating dark and mud. His knees had gone numb. The cold had seeped into every inch of bone and marrow. His body shuddered without control. That firmly shut door loomed like a cruel joke, a silent proclamation of his marriage's death. In the end, it was a patrolling security guard who found him and half-dragged, half-carried him back to his car, where he sat like a soulless puppet. The days that followed were a slow, grinding torment. Ethan tried every way he could think of to win me back. His calls were blocked, his messages vanished into silence. He waited like a madman outside my company building, only to be met with the cold eyes of security guards who'd been told by my orders not to admit him. He ran back to what had once been our home, the villa holding 5 years of memories, only to find the lock replaced. The electronic keypad flashed an unfeeling red light, shutting him out completely. He reached out to anyone he thought might still have contact with me, even my parents, only to receive polite but distant responses. Either there was only silence on the other end, heavy with unspoken sighs, or the conversation ended quickly. Everyone already knew what had happened that night at the reunion. That blurry, suggestive photo had grown wings, flying through their entire shared social circle. Ethan had become nothing more than a complete joke. Despair wound itself around him like a creeping vine, tightening with every passing day. Night after night, he lay awake, unable to sleep. The moment he closed his eyes, he saw the cold, mocking look I'd given him the last time we met, Sophie kneeling on the floor in hysterical sobs, and that divorce agreement lying in the rain. At work, he drifted through the day in a daze. During several important meetings, his mind wandered so badly that his boss sharply warned him. He felt like a ship lost in a storm, directionless and broken, ready to be capsized by the next wave and swallowed by the depths. Meanwhile, I moved like a precise surgical blade, cutting away every tie between us with cold clarity. My legal team worked with astonishing efficiency. Within days, a revised, airtight divorce agreement with every clause laid out and no room for negotiation was delivered straight to his desk at the office, along with a formal notice giving him a deadline to move out of the villa. Also included was a detailed list of how our marital assets would be divided. My company shares, investment returns, and real estate were all clearly separated from anything we'd accumulated together, down to the smallest detail. What Ethan was entitled to amounted to nothing more than the meager savings in his salary account. and the aging car he had been driving for years. As for the villa he once believed we'd live in for the rest of our lives, he now saw in black and white that had been purchased outright before our marriage and legally had nothing to do with him. When he saw the number on the list, so far removed from what he thought he deserved, his stomach churned. Furious, he went to confront my lawyers, only to be met by a man calmly pushing up his gold-rimmed glasses and reciting the clauses of the marriage law and our prenuptial agreement. Each word landed like a cold iron hammer, shattering his final illusions. "Mr. Chen," the lawyer said evenly, "based on Miss Lin's notarized prenuptial property certificate and the postnuptial property separation agreement you both signed, this division is entirely legal and compliant. If you object, you're free to file a lawsuit. However," he paused, his eyes carrying the faintest trace of pity, "given the evidence currently in your possession, your chances of winning are extremely slim." Ethan stumbled out of the law office, dazed. The afternoon sun stabbed at his eyes. Standing amid the rush of traffic, he felt for the first time a painfully clear realization. He hadn't only lost a wife. He'd lost everything in these 5 years of marriage that he'd thought was unshakable, but had in truth been under my control all along. His so-called success, the lifestyle he'd been so proud of, his very foothold in this city, he now saw it had all been nothing more than a vine clinging to the sturdy tree that was me. And when the tree withdrew, the vine could only wither and fall. He was now truly alone, penniless. On the day he moved out of the villa, the sky was heavy with clouds. He packed only some clothes and personal items into the trunk of his old car. Everything else remained: the expensive furniture, the art pieces, even the faint, cool scent that still lingered in the air, all stabbing at him like needles. For the last time, he stood in the empty living room, glancing around. This had once been his haven when he was tired, his proof of success, what he believed was his home. Now it was nothing but a cold, luxurious shell. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the garden was still immaculate, but there would never again be a cool, quiet figure standing there waiting for him. He pulled out his phone, his fingers trembling as he dialed that number he knew by heart, only to hear, yet again, the mechanical voice. "The number you have dialed is currently busy." Hearing it, his hand dropped uselessly to his side. "Lana," he rasped into the empty air of the house, "are you really not going to give me even one more chance?" The only answer was the dead echo of his own voice. Dragging his feet like a man with no soul left, he climbed into the old car, started the engine, and drove away from the villa. In the rearview mirror, the building that had carried 5 years of their marriage grew smaller and smaller until it finally vanished around the bend, burying along with it the period of his life he'd once thought was his most glorious. The car merged into the city traffic, moving aimlessly. Ethan had no idea where to go. The small, rented apartment, cramped and unfamiliar, was nothing more than a temporary shelter, a constant reminder of how far he had fallen. He switched on the car radio, trying to push away the suffocating silence inside the vehicle. The host's cheerful voice rang out. "And now, a quick update on local business news. It is reported that, led by Chechen Capital with participation from several well-known institutions, the Series B financing for untold Technologies was officially signed today, totaling $250 million. At the signing ceremony, untold Technologies founder and CEO Miss Lana Lin stated that this round of funding will primarily be used for that name. Lana Lin struck him like a thunderclap, slicing through the haze in his mind. He slammed on the brakes. The screech of tires tore through the air, followed by a chorus of angry honks from behind. He stared at the radio as if trying to burn a hole through it. $250 million. Series B financing. untold Technologies. How long had it been since he left? And in that time, the woman who had once shared his bed, the woman whose terrifying calm had chilled him to the bone after his betrayal at the reunion, had now risen to such dazzling heights. She now stood in a place so far above him, in a position he could never hope to reach, someone he could only look up to. The gulf between them hit him like a tidal wave, swallowing him whole. And with it came a crushing, suffocating regret that felt as if it might tear him apart. What had he once held in his hands? What had he destroyed with his own doing? He slumped forward, pressing his forehead hard against the cold steering wheel. The horn blared sharply, but he didn't care. Regret seeped through his bones like poison, corroding his insides until the pain became unbearable. Now he understood, fully and completely, the kind of treasure he had lost. And for what? For someone like Sophie. For her, he had knelt in front of Lana, begging like a fool. Thinking back now, it was laughably stupid, pathetic. The news of Xi'an Technologies' Series B success landed like a boulder in a still lake, sending shockwaves through the city's tech and finance circles. The amount alone, 250 million, coupled with the prestige of Chechen capital leading the round, instantly made Lana Lin the center of attention. Flashbulbs began chasing her wherever she went. A prominent business magazine's cover featured her in a sleek white suit, standing in front of Xi'an's futuristic logo. She was angled slightly to the side, her jawline sharp and elegant, her gaze steady on the camera. There was no forced sharpness, only a natural, commanding presence. The bold cover headline read, "Breaking the Cocoon, Lana Lin and Xi'an's AI Journey." In the studio of a top financial news channel, under the bright lights, the host fired off one pointed question after another, about the industry's future, about core technological barriers, about post-funding strategic plans. Lana sat poised on the sofa, relaxed yet impeccably graceful. Her answers were clear, her data precise, and every so often, when discussing a technological breakthrough, her eyes lit up with a pure, unguarded brilliance. Her voice was steady and pleasant, carrying a persuasive rationality. As she spoke, she painted a vision of an intelligent future filled with possibilities, never aggressive, yet leaving every listener fully aware of the depth of her wisdom and scope. "Miss Lin," the host said suddenly, shifting the tone, "many say that this successful funding round is a spectacular comeback for you. After all, just a few months ago, there were certain rumors in the industry about your personal life." The air in the studio went still. All eyes turned to Lana, waiting to see how the newly crowned queen of tech would handle a question tinged with gossip. Her smile didn't change. Not even her gaze flickered. She adjusted her posture slightly, her eyes meeting both the host's and the camera's head-on. "Personal life experiences, whether in smooth waters or in adversity, are a kind of wealth," she said, her voice clear and steady. "They may bring temporary trouble, but they sharpen the mind and make you see more clearly what you truly want and the path you should take." She paused for a moment, her tone still warm, but carrying an unmistakable weight. "As for a comeback, I never felt that I'd fallen," I said evenly. "My team and I have always been moving forward. Our goal has always been ahead of us." There was no angry rebuttal, no aggrieved defense, only a detached confidence and a steady sense of purpose. Just a few concise words, yet they were enough to deflect the probing curiosity of gossip and bring the conversation gently but firmly back to the rightful path of career and vision. The audience broke into genuine applause. Even the host's expression softened into one of admiration. These reports and interviews were like a constant barrage of needles, pricking at Ethan's nerves again and again. His tiny rented apartment was littered with takeout boxes, the air thick with the smell of stagnation. On the old TV screen, footage of me at the signing ceremony played, standing under the spotlight, chatting easily with suited investors, poised, radiant, and confident. It was a version of me he had never seen before, so dazzling it almost hurt to look. He suddenly grabbed the remote and hurled it at the screen. There was a dull thud. The image flickered and warped, but my calm, beautiful face still lingered stubbornly on the display, as if silently mocking his uselessness. Rage twisted through him. He collapsed back onto the stained sofa, burying his hands in his hair in agony. Regret was a venomous snake, gnawing at his heart day and night. Again and again he thought back to the past 5 years, how I had quietly left a light on and a bowl of soup waiting for him when he worked late. How I had calmly helped him analyze pros and cons when his career hit roadblocks. How I had kept our home running in perfect order so that he never had to worry. And him? He had taken it all for granted. Worse, for the sake of a cheap, perfume-scented fantasy, he had destroyed the priceless stability and devotion we had built together. What had he lost? Not just a wife, but a partner who could stand beside him, even lead him toward greater heights. A soulmate he had foolishly mistaken for something replaceable. The crushing emptiness nearly swallowed him whole. He moved like a walking corpse, going through the motions at a job that no longer held a future, enduring the pitying or scornful stares of colleagues. At night, he returned to his cold rental, drowning himself in alcohol to escape reality, only to be jolted awake by my face, shining from some news segment or magazine cover. He scoured the internet for any scrap of news about me, obsessively watching from the outside like some unhealthy voyeur, seeing me speak confidently at tech forums, donate discreetly at charity galas, lead my team through breakthrough after breakthrough. My world was expanding at a pace he couldn't fathom, rich, vibrant, and alive, while he was forever shut out, rotting in the swamp of his past. Sometimes he thought of Sophie, the woman who had bewitched him enough to make him kneel and beg me for her sake. Word was she'd fallen deep into debt, hounded by creditors, hiding wherever she could, and eventually slinking out of the city entirely. She vanished without a trace, leaving not even a whisper behind, and for that woman, he had thrown away everything. The realization was like a dull blade, cutting him a little deeper every single day. Time, relentless and indifferent, carried everything forward. A year and a half slipped by in a blur of work and transformation. On an autumn evening, as city lights began to glow, the most prestigious annual Financial Person of the Year awards were set to open at the landmark Starlight Art Center downtown. The long red carpet stretched from the entrance, flanked by dense rows of cameras and reporters. Flashbulbs fired in rapid bursts, turning the night sky as bright as day. Well-dressed socialites, business magnates, and A-list celebrities arrived one after another, each greeted by waves of screams and shutter clicks. A sleek, understated black stretch limousine rolled to a stop at the far end of the carpet. The door opened, and a leg stepped out first, slender, elegantly shaped, wearing silver stilettos that clicked firmly onto the polished carpet. In an instant, every camera swiveled, locking onto the new arrival like predators catching the scent of prime prey. I stepped out, my hand resting lightly on the arm of the man beside me. I stepped out of the car with poise and calm. I was wearing a champagne-colored satin gown, tailored to perfection, its smooth lines tracing the curves of my tall, slender figure. The skirt wasn't exaggerated, yet with every step it caught the light, shimmering with a subdued luxury, like a stream of flowing moonlight. My hair was swept into an elegant yet slightly relaxed chignon, bearing the graceful line of my swan-like neck and a pair of minimalist diamond studs. My makeup was refined but never heavy, just enough to highlight the cool confidence in my expression. A year of growth, and the weight of my position, had stripped away the last trace of youth's raw edges, leaving behind a composed, powerful presence, calm and deep, with a quiet luster beneath the surface. The man beside me was none other than Ryan Shen, the head of Chechen Capital. He wore a flawlessly tailored black tuxedo, standing tall, his demeanor cool and steady, the depth in his eyes carrying the composure of someone in complete control. He turned slightly, naturally extending his arm so my hand could rest lightly at his elbow, an effortless, gentlemanly gesture. The two of us together in both appearance and presence seemed perfectly matched. "Miss Lin over here? Mr. Shen, Miss Lin, look this way. Miss Lin, do you feel confident about winning tonight? Mr. Shen, there are rumors that Chechen Capital's next strategic focus will be in the AO medical sector. Is that true?" The press went into a frenzy. Questions firing like machine gun rounds, flashbulbs so relentless they were blinding. Ryan raised his hand slightly, a subtle calming motion, and his commanding presence quieted the chaos almost instantly. He glanced toward me, his gaze warm yet questioning. Meeting his eyes, I let a faint but captivating smile curve my lips, gave a small nod, and then turned toward the cameras. My expression carried the flawless confidence of a successful entrepreneur. My voice was clear and pleasant. "Thank you all for your attention. Tonight belongs to everyone who has contributed to this city's economic growth. As for Jian's future, we will remain focused on technology itself, letting our products speak for us." The answer was polished, watertight, and guided the spotlight neatly back to the event and the company's growth. A barely perceptible curve appeared at the corner of Ryan's lips, clearly pleased with my handling of the moment. He kept me naturally within his protective presence as we stepped side by side onto the red carpet, moving with unhurried grace, our combined aura in full force. the champagne sheen of my gown intertwined with the deep black of his tuxedo, becoming the most striking sight on the carpet, stealing countless frames from the cameras. The noise and flashing lights around us seemed to fade into a mere backdrop. This scene was captured by countless high-definition lenses and broadcast instantly through TV and online streams to every corner of the city. On the other side of town, in a noisy, greasy noodle shop, Ethan sat in the farthest corner. In front of him sat a bowl of beef noodles, untouched and long gone cold. On the grimy table, his cracked old phone was streaming the live red carpet broadcast. The moment I appeared, my arm resting lightly on Ryan's, smiling under the halo of flashbulbs, he froze as if under a spell. Even his breathing stalled. On the screen, I was stunning beyond measure, confident, composed, radiant. And beside me was Ryan Shen, a man at the pinnacle of the pyramid, someone Ethan couldn't even hope to glimpse, no matter how high he stretched. Together, Ryan and I looked perfectly matched, effortlessly harmonious, as if we had always been meant to stand that way. Then came my faint but genuine smile, a smile that felt to him like a poisoned blade driven deep into his heart, twisting until pain rippled through his entire body. How could she? How could she smile like that? How could she so quickly stand by another man's side? That smile, that glow, that happiness, it should have been his. All his. The surge of pain, resentment, and a mad, crushing jealousy swept away the last shreds of his reason. He snatched up the phone, his bloodshot eyes locked on the figure that haunted and tormented him in equal measure. Lynn. The growl in his throat was low and feral, his fingers creaking from the force of his grip, nearly shattering the already cracked screen. He lurched to his feet, knocking over the plastic stool behind him with a screech that drew startled glances from the surrounding diners. But he didn't notice any of it. Like a cornered beast driven past the edge, his eyes burned blood red. Snatching the worn jacket draped over the back of his chair, he stumbled out of the noodle shop and plunged headlong into the cold night. He had to see her right now. He had to get answers. He refused to believe she had erased him from her life so quickly. He refused to believe she felt nothing for him anymore. The wind lashed at his face like knives, but it couldn't douse the firestorm of rage and desperation consuming him. He flagged down a taxi, and when he rasped out the words, "Starshine Arts Center," his voice was hoarse like a rusted bell. The car weaved through the nighttime traffic. In the back seat, Ethan shook violently, from both the cold and the feverish churn of his emotions. He stared fixedly at the neon light streaming backward outside the window, his mind looping only two images. Me, resting against Ryan Shen's arm under the blinding lights, and the rare, gentle smiles I had shown him over the past 5 years. The tenderness he once ignored, belittled, and took for granted was now the sharpest blade, slicing through his nerves. "Faster! Drive faster!" he barked, pounding the back of the driver's seat, every cell in his body screaming to see me immediately. Inside the Starshine Arts Center, the hall was ablaze with light. The award ceremony was reaching its climax. The highest honor of the year, the Golden Laurel, had just been announced, unsurprisingly going to GN Technologies and me. Under the massive crystal chandelier, I stepped onto the stage once more, my champagne-colored gown flowing under the dazzling lights with a soft radiance. I accepted the weighty golden trophy, my smile calm and assured. The spotlight followed me like a coronation crown. Thank you to the judging committee for this recognition, and to all the friends and partners who have supported GN. This award belongs to every member who has fought alongside us. My voice carried through the hall, clear and steady. In the past year, we've faced challenges and seized opportunities, which has only strengthened our belief that innovation and deep investment in technology are the keys to navigating the tides of our time. This honor is not only a recognition of our past, but also a call to push forward. GN will continue to focus on breakthroughs in core AI technologies, committed to using the power of technology to create a better life. Thunderous applause erupted. In the VIP section, Ryan's gaze never left me. The depth of his eyes held unrestrained admiration and pride. When the ceremony ended and the audience began to exit in an orderly flow, Ryan's driver was already waiting at the VIP entrance. He draped the cashmere shawl he'd brought over my shoulders and shielded me as we walked toward the car. "Congratulations, Lynn," his deep voice was warm. Well deserved. Thank you. I tightened the shawl around me, glancing at him with a softer, more relaxed smile now that the night's responsibilities were over. And thank you for always supporting me. The way I said his name, Ryan, was no longer the polite, distant Mr. Shen, but carried a natural closeness. Just as Ryan opened the car door and guided me toward it, a hoarse, raw shout split the air of the relatively quiet VIP passage. Lynn. It was a voice laced with pain, desperation, and unhinged recklessness. From the shadows of the nearby landscaping, a figure lunged out like an uncontrolled projectile, planting himself squarely between me and the car. It was Ethan. He had clearly been waiting there for a long time. The night wind had whipped his hair into a tangled mess. His wrinkled old jacket hung loosely over a body that seemed shrunken. Under the cold white lights of the passage, his face looked ashen and haggard, but his eyes, bloodshot and wild, were locked on me, swirling with pain, despair, unwillingness, and a near maniacal obsession. Ryan reacted instantly. His tall frame shifted forward, subtly but firmly positioning himself between me and Ethan. His gaze turned razor-sharp, sweeping over the uninvited intruder with a cold, hawk-like precision. The pressure of his presence spread through the air in an unspoken warning. The driver also moved quickly, stepping out of the car in alert readiness. I remained behind Ryan, shielded from view, my face as calm and unreadable as still water. I looked at the man before me, gaunt, hollow-eyed, his gaze tinged with madness. This was the man who had been my husband for 5 years, the man who had personally destroyed everything between us. My eyes held no anger, no resentment, not even the faintest ripple of emotion. I looked at him as if he were a complete stranger, an insignificant obstacle in my path. That utter indifference shattered Ethan's heart more than any furious outburst could have. Lynn. His voice trembled uncontrollably, thick with sobs. He ignored the icy stare Ryan Shen gave him, focusing all his attention on the face that caused him such unbearable pain. I was wrong. I really know I was wrong, he choked out. Please, please, just give me one more chance, okay? His words tumbled out incoherently, the weight of his agony stripping away all dignity. I regret it every single day. I wish I could kill the man I was back then. I was blind, I lost my mind, I shouldn't have touched Susie. I shouldn't have broken your heart. Lynn, look at me, look at what I've become. Without you, I live like a dog. I'd rather be dead. Tears and snot streamed down his face as his body shook violently. He started to move forward, reaching for my hand, but one cold glance from Ryan, backed by the driver's watchful step forward, froze him where he stood. All he could do was hold out his hand helplessly, like a beggar pleading for alms. I know you hate me, you can hit me, curse me, I'll take it. Just don't punish me like this. Don't be with someone else. I can't take it. I really can't. His fingers clawed at his own hair. Then his gaze shifted to Ryan, and in his eyes burned raw jealousy and venom. What's so great about him? He only wants your company's money. I'm the one who truly loves you. No one in this world loves you more than I do. 5 years, Lynn. 5 years and you can just forget it all? Please, come back. I don't want anything else, just you. Please, give me one more chance. The last chance. His voice rose to a hoarse roar, echoing in the empty passage, thick with suffocating despair. The autumn night wind swept through, carrying its biting chill. I stood quietly, listening to his desperate crying and pleading, my expression unchanged. Only when his breath grew ragged from emotion, when he finally stopped to stare at me with those bloodshot, pleading eyes, did I move. I didn't look at him. Instead, I lowered my head slightly, my lashes dropping. One pale, slender hand lifted, lightly, with a tenderness and gravity that defied words, and rested over my still flat belly. The gesture was effortless, natural, and yet it struck with the force of a thunderclap. Ethan's voice cut off instantly. It was as if an invisible bolt of lightning had struck him where he stood. His entire body froze, his eyes locked on my hand resting on my abdomen, disbelief flooding his face. His mind went blank. Every sound in the world vanished, leaving only the roar of blood rushing to his head. Ryan's gaze shifted toward me, and in that moment, the cold severity in his features melted. In its place was unguarded tenderness and anticipation. I lifted my head at last, meeting Ethan's twisted, shock-ridden face for the first time. My eyes were calm like an ancient well with no end. Then I allowed my lips to curve upward in a true smile, one carrying the soft radiance of motherhood, the peace of closure, and the quiet relief of finally leaving the past behind. "You're too late, Mr. Chen." My voice was soft as a feather, yet each word rang crystal clear in his ears, every syllable like a nail driven into ice, pinning him in place. "I'm going to be a mother." The world collapsed for Ethan in that instant, shattering, obliterating everything before his eyes. The gentle way I rested my hand, the bright, undeniable smile on my face, and the tender, protective look in Ryan Shen's eyes, all of it turned into the cruelest slow motion for Ethan. Each frame cut into what was left of his nerves like a dull blade, again and again. A mother. I was pregnant. Ryan's child. Then what had the 5 years between Ethan and me been? Nothing but a complete, bitter joke. The pain and suffocating despair came like an icy tide, swallowing him whole in an instant. His mouth opened, a ragged, wheezing sound escaping his throat like a broken bellows, but no words came. His body swayed, vision going dark. He could no longer hold himself upright. He fell straight back, crashing heavily onto the cold, unyielding ground with a dull thud. There he lay, like a heap of lifeless sludge, his empty eyes staring at the dazzling yet unreachable night sky above the art center, all light and life gone from them. Ryan didn't spare the man on the ground even a glance, as if he were nothing more than an eyesore to be stepped around. Instead, he shielded me with quiet care, his voice so gentle it could melt into water. "It's cold out here. Let's get in the car, don't catch a chill." I drew my gaze back, my lips curving into a serene smile. With Ryan's attentive hand guiding me, I lowered my head and slid into the warm, comfortable interior of the car. The door closed softly, shutting out all the cold and noise outside, along with the man who had been abandoned entirely to the past. The sleek black sedan eased forward, merging into the city's glittering stream of lights, carrying us toward a future filled with hope. Inside, Ryan's warm, steady hand gently covered mine where it rested on my belly. Our eyes met, and we shared a quiet smile, unspoken warmth flowing between us in the stillness. Outside, in the biting night wind, Ethan lay motionless on the frozen ground like a shell emptied of its soul. His world had shrunk to nothing but endless, eternal darkness. And mine was already bathed in sunlight, warmed by spring, nurturing the most vibrant new life of all.